At this time when the economy is struggling and when New York is struggling, this is really in its own way a bright light in the midst of all of this. When these stairs open, it will be a reminder of people that Broadway and Times Square and New York City itself have always been about aspiration, about aspiring to be the best. And with this innovative architecture, with this stunning design, we're reminding people that we're always trying to get a little bit higher and a little bit better. And that itself is really important for the city at a tough time, to show people that we keep moving forward and we keep striving to be the best. It was a mess. I mean, no one came here except to buy tickets. They would come to be in line for TKTS, but it was not a place to gather. There was no space. Literally, the crowds would spill over into the bed of the street. And so we negotiated with the city and we got a much larger plaza by taking back a couple of lanes of traffic. We said we're going to make it world class and have high quality granite. And we were going to create this place, these Spanish steps on steroids in a sense, where you can come and sit down and look over the rest of Times Square. So we hope and we believe that this is the first step in a multi-point plan that we've been developing with the city to improve the pedestrian environment, have world-class design, and have more pedestrian space throughout all of Times Square. Times Square has always been about new technologies, about cutting edge, about doing something new and different. I mean, the reason it's called the Great White Way is because back in the early part of the 20th century, there were all these fascinating things called light bulbs, electric lights that were lighting the streets and lighting the advertising signs, and that was the breakthrough new technology. There are pieces of glass that are bigger and stronger and more complex than literally anything that had been built in the world before, because the skeleton of this building is glass. The bones of this building are glass rather than what it usually is steel, and there's been architectural and engineering challenges associated with that in some ways we had to work out when we were moving through it.
The booth was opened in 1973, so it's 35 years ago. And the reason the booth was created, it was an experiment when it was open. And it was an experiment, kind of the idea was generated by the city of New York and the theater industry. In 1973, this was not the vibrant, healthy area that it is today. It was really, Times Square was a scary place. And so the idea was to see what would happen if you put a legitimate sales outlet in the middle of Times Square. And of course there's Gray's Drugstore from way back when, where you used to be able to buy last minute half price tickets. And so it was really formalizing the same idea. Tickets were made available to us on the day of performance at half price. And it was, let's see what happens. So this is a park, it's a city park. So the city put a trailer here and it was, we'll see what happens for the summer. And of course it took off. And it took off really, really quickly. And over the course of 35 years, we've sold over 50 million tickets. The people who come here, they're coming for a variety of reasons. They're coming because they need the discount. They can't afford full price. A lot of people who come here are coming to Broadway for the very first time. And one of the things, if you stood on the line, you know that there's constant conversation between the patrons about, what have you seen? This is what I saw. Can I take my 12-year-old to it? So it's a real information source. I mean, the whole experience of coming is part of the experience for many people of going to the theater, and it's a way to learn about going to the theater. So among the things I'm excited about is before this project, you really came to Duffy Square to buy a ticket at the booth or to look at the statue and learn about Father Duffy. But this was not a place you came to just to be here. And with this project and the new steps and the new plaza, this is going to be a place for people to come and congregate just to be here. There's nowhere else to sit down in the middle of Times Square, and you're going to be able to look at all of this, which is really unusual. And I'm hoping, therefore, that people who aren't here to buy a theater ticket might actually then, looking at the people on the line, hearing the buzz, will think about it and maybe go to the theater where they wouldn't have thought about it before. So I think it's a real celebration, not only for Times Square, but it's going to be a real energizing element for the theater.
It's going to return Times Square to a place of excitement. It's going to bring a lot more crowds and people to come here but it's also going to return the site to a place of remembrance and reverence and reflection for a great American hero. Well, Father Duffy, we consider him a great American hero. He was not only a very caring and compassionate priest, he was a very courageous chaplain. He was associated with the Fighting 69th for the better part of his military career, starting out as a lieutenant, and upon his retirement he was a lieutenant colonel. He was best known for his courageous support and efforts during World War I, when he went to France with the Fighting 69th and literally remained in the trenches for over a year and a half to support the men, not only spiritually, but emotionally and physically as well. It was placed here in 1937 by Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia. Father Duffy died in 1932, and within 5 years then, they decided to place the statue here. One of the reasons it was placed here is that his last assignment as a priest, he was the pastor of Holy Cross Parish, which is right here in Times Square. He was a selfless man who gave his entire life both to God and to country.
It really makes an urban space usable, and is really an asset for New York City. I mean, when you sit on these steps and you can just sit and ponder and look at what's going on around you, then I think you'll get what the concept was. To me, that's the heart of what it's about. This is an all-glass structure, so it's glass treads sitting on glass beams, sitting on glass walls. So everything is supported by glass. It's probably the first of its kind, if not the first of its kind, and it really represents another nudge forward in sort of cutting-edge glass technology. And I also think that the materials, the LEDs, they all reflect sort of the technology that's zipping around you here, but it's done in a very different way. It's a sort of silent contrast to what's going on, and I've always used the sort of analogy of being in the eye of the storm of what's going on. There's sort of cacophony of like signs, LEDs flashing, and then there's this very gentle, glowing red glass step. So by using a geothermal system, which is a system where we drill 5 wells down into the ground 450 feet deep, and we're basically using some of the stored heat in the ground as either a heat sink. It's a more energy efficient, and what it's enabled us to do is to provide a way to radiantly heat the steps, or also in summer we could run radiant cooling, so we could cool the steps if we want to, and at the same time that's tied into the system that's running the booth. This is an innovative project, and whenever you do anything innovative, which is a combination of technologies that were done before, but you're sort of pushing the bar out a little bit, it's a very complex thing. I've always thought of Times Square as the town square of New York. I describe it as sort of the best seats in town to see the greatest show on earth.
The booth is a fiberglass booth. It's made of fiberglass, so it's a sculpture, basically. It's like a boat. It's a turned upside down boat. It was made in 2 halves. One of the things that we thought is very important is that it be this object inside this glass box. So it is its own little building that sits inside this glass box. It was made in Rhode Island in 2 halves. Came to site, dropped in overnight, and placed and put down. It literally is made by a boat builder. So it's literally a boat hull turned upside down.
Father Duffy was enclosed around a fence. It was very inaccessible, and we opened up the plaza, we enlarged the plaza, and we redesigned the wearing surface and the contours, making it more accessible to pedestrians. We integrated the ticket booth into the plaza. It previously had no integration in terms of how it was going to work, and we resolved that. Well, we closed lanes both on 7th Avenue and on Broadway in order to enlarge the plaza. It's part of a whole streetscape program that is supposed to take place over the next 10 years. This is the first part of it.
Twist your right shoulder toward this way. Yeah.
The plaza at night is going to be very well lit in terms of all the other lights in the Times Square area.